I want to speak about the case involving our sister Sonya Massey out of Springfield, Illinois. And basically, what had happened was our sister Sonya Massey called the cops to, report that someone had been trying to break in or enter her home, and she may have really, been having a battle with, mental stress and, having mental health issues, then white supremacist race soldier, gets there and comes up in our sister's house, Sean Grayson, and he said he was in fear and, for his life, and he felt threatened, and he unalived our sister, and that's a bunch of nonsense because he ain't feel in fear or threatened. They always use that as a, excuse to take black life. Our sister Sonya Massey won but a buck 20, soaking wet and wouldn't harm a fly. This white supremacist race soldier, Sean Grayson, he got a slap on the wrist. He got off with second-degree murder, and that don't hold no real time. It only holds about 4 to 20 years. He already been in there for some time, so he'd be out in about, 2 with time served. He should have got first-degree murder or life without the possibility of parole. This punk white supremacist race soldier going to do the bare minimum. And I could bet my last damn dollar that his a jury was full of nothing but his fellow white supremacist brethren and tethers, you know what I mean? So I got the audio and the video of our, sister Sonya Massey being dealt in injustice, even in death, because, him getting off, with a damn slap on the wrist is our sister and her family being dealt in injustice, you know what I mean? He should have got life without the possibility of parole or even the death sentence, but it goes to show you how the system of racism, white supremacy looks out for coddles and pampers they own. And we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do. You know what I mean? Fair use.
I'm James Wilburn. I'm her father. Sean Grayson should be able to get out of jail. My daughter can get out of that burial vault and walk out of Oakwood Cemetery.
And this is her father right here, our sister Sonya Massey's father, and I'm in alignment and agreement with what he just said. He should get out of jail when our sister Sonya Massey is able to get out the cemetery, and the reason why he got so light of a sentence being second degree was because that punk white supremacist Sean Grayson had the complexion for the protection. But let's continue.
I know that plot that's waiting for him, he can get to it as soon as he can. And it wouldn't make me any difference at all. But there's a difference in this country when you have my skin color and Grayson's skin color.
Yes, indeed, he heard father speaking truth to power. He right on the money with what he's saying right here.
We need serious justice, not a miscarriage of justice that happened here in Peoria. We need to pass the George Floyd Policing Act.
That's, that's all right, that George Floyd policing that, but we on the black FBA grassroots, we advocate for a black hate crimes bill because it will protect and insulate us, and protect us from white supremacists, race soldiers and, anyone who wants to get out here and commit, anti-black racism against, our people. It'll protect and insulate us and hold, those guilty of practicing anti-black racism. It'll hold those, guilty accountable. So, I'm more for the black hate crimes bill. We need to get that, the same way the Asians got that Asian hate crime bill. We need a black hate crime bill put in the law quick, fast, and in a hurry.
We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Act. Yes. We need to...
see the John Lewis Voting Act, that's where he ain't on the money with that one. You know what I mean? Because they get out here and use, the deaths of our people, you know what I mean? And I kind of didn't like that, him using the death of his daughter to be political theater for the Democratic plantation. I wish some of our, older black folks, get off of that, Democratic plantation and say, the hell with either party, we got to be about tangibles. Whoever's, willing to produce something for, foundational black Americans, that's who, we voting for. If don't none of them produce, we sit it out, but stop using, the death of our people as political theater, on behalf of the Democratic Party, so I don't really agree with him, on that aspect, but let's continue.
Make the Sonya Massey law across the whole United States. Yeah. Then,
because that John Lewis Voting Act is attached to the Democratic plantation.
No family in our country can go through what our family has gone through, because this man should have never had a badge and a gun. This man was kicked out of the service. He was in 6 police departments.
He had a lengthy history of corruption. You know, he shouldn't have been on the police force, no way. You know what I mean?
In 3.5 years. That is shameful. Shameful on Sangamon County for even having a person like that, giving him a gun and a badge. And his gun, he had a sight on it. He had a laser sight.
And I think, you know, I always say this on my channel, but I think, you know, police should be required to live in the communities that they're supposed to be serving and protecting and look like the residents in those communities. You know, that way it won't be easy for these, you know, damn race soldiers to run around here harming our people left and right. You should look like the people in that community, also be required to live in that community, so you know how that community, you know, functions and operates. You know what I mean?
So all he had to do was put that laser sight where what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to shoot my daughter in the face, and he did it. He shot 3 times, but even with a laser on and going through a police academy twice, he still only shot her the once, which was good enough. But you see, my Judeo-Christian upbringing tells me to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So my joy here today is that I know I'll see my baby again. And whenever the sun opens and Gabriel blows that horn, we're going to leave here and I'll see her again. That's about all I can tell y'all.
Yeah, family. But in closing, I seen another news segment where our sister Sonya Massey's mom says she feels sorry for, you know, the Grayson family. They apologize. You know, they lost a son and she lost her daughter, our sister Sonya Massey, you know, and I don't feel sorry for them no way. You know what I mean? Because they Sean Grayson probably learned that white supremacist, you know, behavior from, you know, his family in all actuality. That's a learned behavior, you know, and I wish some of our, you know, older black folks get off of this, you know, forgiveness kick, you know, where we feel that we gotta, you know, forgive people that, you know, commit these heinous acts against our people. You know, I ain't with that forgiveness kick. You know, if somebody does something to our people, you know, I ain't on no kumbaya kick. You know, I'm down for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You know, you harm one of ours, you know, the same thing should be done to your people. You know, so we got to get, you know, some of our older black folks got to get off that forgiveness kick. You know what I mean? And start, you know, really holding these people accountable. You know, but in closing, if, you know, the so-called justice system ain't going to, you know, hold these degenerate white supremacists and race soldiers accountable, you know, for the atrocities that they commit against our people, you know, we on the black FBA grassroots going to get out here, you know, and take the law and the justice into our own hands to ensure that our people, you know, are protected and insulated. Just my thoughts on the matter, but this is a grave injustice, you know, him getting off with second-degree murder to our sister Sonya Massey and her family. Peace.